I'd like to just say welcome to everybody. It's amazing to be here. There are so many people in this room who mean so much to me, not just that I love, but that have had such an influence on me. The people on the stage, obviously, mostly. My wife is here, my daughter is here, my sister-in-law, my nephew. My best friend in the world, Jessica Goldsmith, is here. My favorite teacher ever, not just in grade school or high school, but also college and law school, Mrs. Barbara Tomlinson. Dr. Barbara Tomlinson is here. I also want to make sure I recognize the other members of my family, not just the Bhararas, but the Sondi family on my mother's side, who sent many children to Randy School as well, who are sitting back there. So there they are. So it's a great honor to be here with so many people who mean so much to me, and I thank you for that. So, look, I can't say it better than my dad said it a second ago, that you give back to those who gave you things, right? And a significant reason why I went to public service in the first place was because I wanted to give back to what not just the community gave me, but this country gave me. I came here not at the beginning of my childhood, but in 4th grade. Then you came in 3rd grade. Yeah. And I don't think I would be the kind of person that I am. I don't think I would have had the success that I've had, but for this school. I mean, I basically talk for a living, and I write for a living. And I learned those 2 skills very deeply here. I want to correct one thing. It was noted that I was valedictorian in my class, which I've always been proud of and I thought was impressive until the first time I think my daughter heard that I was valedictorian in my class. And she asked, well, how many people were in your class? And I said, 37. She was very unimpressed.
No, likewise, I can only echo what both my dad and Preet said. For me, it's the trifecta. My wife and son are also here and similar share the Sondi family and all of our friends. But for me, when I say the trifecta, I mean you guys. Really, my parents and Preet and the school are really the 3 core reasons when I think about any success that I've had. You guys obviously work really hard to pay for the tuition here, which was never inexpensive. And then Preet, you've always been my role model. He taught me how to read, so I wouldn't even have been able to get into the school absent you. And then at age 2, right? And then the school itself. I can't echo it better than what my dad said in terms of what it instilled in us, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, a little bit. So thanks to everyone here, but that's the reason.
That's great. So as lifers who have gone on to incredible endeavors, how did you specifically take the Rani experience out into the world? Obviously in your early education at great institutions and beyond.
Sure. I think a lot of different things, but the one thing that I think about when I think of Rani is how hard it was, actually. It was pretty challenging, and the rigor and the discipline and the preparation that the school had at the time, and just all of that. It was small, but it was tough, and I think it made you really prepared. So when I went off to college, I didn't think I realized it all, but I think I feel now, looking back on it, that I was more prepared than maybe 90% of the other kids. And so I think that's kind of what I brought with me.
Similar response I have. I think in particular, what was really great about Rani, the curriculum was very, very heavily intensive on reading and writing. And I lament as an older guy now that kids today can't really write very well. And I think no matter what field you're in, whether you go into writing, and I've written a couple of books, and obviously I speak for a living, but even if you're a doctor or a business person, the ability to communicate effectively and with economy is something that I learned here. I mean, I think Mr. Rani at the time when he was still with us would say that, I don't know if this is true or not, but I presumed it to be, that we had twice as much instruction in reading and writing as the average public school, and that makes a difference. Everyone who came out of the school can express themselves well, and that's increasingly fading from modern life. So I've used that skill in addition to critical thinking skills and being rigorous, learning rigor here. The ability to effectively communicate is something that has helped me a lot, and I think about that all the time.
That's great. Very, very important in those parents of us who are dealing with the digital world, and so hopefully they'll take your words to heart. So as lifers, can you share one of your memorable Rani moments?
I had a lot of memorable Rani moments. I guess consistent with what I've mentioned already and what My dad mentioned about that award that the Bharara family gives out. So I was not as athletic like my brother was. I did some cross country. So my sport was what we, I guess, still call forensics, public speaking. So I joined the speech team, not because I had any interest in standing in front of an audience and speaking, which may sound odd now, but when I was in 9th grade, I had no interest in that. And these guys made me do it. They made me join, and to this day, he takes credit for everything that happened subsequently, and he probably deserves it. He said, join the speech team. So I got on a little bus and went, I forgot what town it was, upstate New Jersey, like northern New Jersey. No, it wasn't that. And I competed for the first time as a freshman, 14-year-old on the Ranny speech and debate team, although there was no debate. It was just Ranny speech, not debate. And I read a poem I was trying to explain to my boys, who later on went on to do extemporaneous speaking in high school in the last few years. And all I had to do, I didn't have to memorize the poem. I had to read a poem by William Carlos Williams. And I know it sounds odd when you think about more recent years, but I almost had an accident sitting at my chair waiting to go up and speak, and it was the most nerve-wracking thing I'd ever done until that moment, because it's scary to speak in front of people if that's not something you do. So that was a memorable moment. I'll never forget that. And I was very upset with my parents for making me do that terrible, terrible endeavor. Fast forward 4 years, I then obviously overcame those nerves somewhat, and I got the award for Best Speaker of the state of New Jersey in oral oratory. So that was a nice arc. And I tell that story sometimes to people who just assume, and I tell a similar story about being a lawyer, who just assume that success just happened right from the start. It took me a while to learn how to speak well and articulate myself well and convey myself. And that's what's true for a lot of people. Just a quick other story, just as long as we're talking about education and growth and maturity. I remember somebody told me when I was a young lawyer and didn't know how to take a deposition effectively, mentioned some famous lawyers who they had observed taking their first deposition, and they were pretty awful at it. The first time you do anything, you're going to be nervous and it's going to be difficult, and you keep at it, and that's another thing that I think Randy taught us, and I learned from my speech experience. You have to start somewhere, and if you persist and you work hard and you care about it and you act in good faith, you can become better, and with luck and tenacity, you can maybe be the best.
He was a very shy guy up to that time. It was basically, he said 9th graders don't go to any forensics team, because Randy was good at forensics at that time. If you remember or not, Bruce Roberts was 3 years senior to him. He's winning awards everywhere and all that. He says, no, Dad, no, 9th grade is not the time, 10th grade. I said, no, you're going today.
He was also 95 pounds, I think.
95 pounds.
Yeah.
And braces.
Yeah. Well, similar.
It's always fun to be on a panel with your dad.
Similar story. I think I told this when I visited a few years ago. I always tell my kids about it. It wasn't academics, but my favorite story here is in baseball. So I played in my town for a while, but there was no JV team at Randy. So my first opportunity was as a freshman, and I felt very confident, felt great about what kind of athlete I was, as Preet said. So first at bat, I get out there and I get a base hit, and I'm feeling great. And the coach had me leading off, playing shortstop, so I felt great about it. And then I proceeded to, over the next several games, go 0 for my next 30. And not only was it 0 for my next 30, but at the time, by the swim building, they would post the batting averages every day after every game. And it would slowly decrease by the very, and I just remember dreading going to the next game. It was cold because the games started in March and April, and so very cold. And you just didn't even want to hit because you'd hurt your hands. And at some point, I just didn't want to play anymore. And the coach just kept putting me out there, hitting lead off, and I could hear the other players on the team, say, why is he still putting this kid out there? And I just remember just dreading it. And by the end there, I was hitting 0-30. And you can't, if any of you guys know anything about baseball, that's one of the worst statistics you can possibly have. So I remember one of the coaches said, why don't you lay a bunt down? You can't do any worse. So yeah, I lay a bunt down and I get a base hit. So now I'm 2 for 32. But what happened right after that was a complete transformation in my confidence. And for the next 5 or 6, well, not that many games, but I got on a hot streak, wound up getting something like 10 out of 15 hits. But by the end of the year, my average wound up being 218. I still remember this. And the coach gave me Rookie of the Year. Now at the time, wasn't. Now you got this great athletic team. Although I see in the basketball and the baseball. Back then it wasn't. So it wasn't such an incredible achievement. But at the same time, I still remember it, because I remember then that kind of carried me into the next year and the next year. And I always tell my kids the same thing, which is when you start getting that failure and you don't want to try anymore and you just want to give up and you just don't want to get out there anymore, you got to remember that it'll come. And I think I said that in my speech a few years ago about the hits will come. And I still remember it now, and I go back to that whenever I'm getting into that thing where I feel like they're not coming.
So Dr. Tomlinson, like all the teachers in the school, really wanted to make sure we knew how to express ourselves well, clearly and critically, and with economy, as I said before, although you in the back maybe didn't hear me say it before. And I think she was disappointed in the exams that we wrote and some of the papers that we wrote. I don't know if you remember this, or so this is something you did a lot. And she said, on one occasion, the test is going to be the following. I don't want you to fill up the blue book. I don't want you to write 8 pages. All I want you to do is write the introductory paragraph to your essay. I'm like, that's pretty easy, introductory paragraph, which required us to focus on all the arguments we were going to make, how we were going to organize them, what the flow of the arguments was going to be, and in one paragraph. And when I tell you that it is a lot harder, particularly when you're in like 9th or 10th or 11th grade, to write a cogent, well-written, analytically sound paragraph, the amount of thought that requires, organization that requires, critical thinking that requires, it's hard to convey. And I had never seen a teacher use that exercise of economy and brevity and specificity to teach someone how to write. And I now, to this day, I teach at law school a seminar at NYU, and I've taught legal writing. I look at the first paragraph, and I don't see first paragraphs that are very good. And when the first paragraph is not right, and the first paragraph is not cogent, that tells you what the rest of the essay is going to look like. So that's a thing, not in the field, not in a competition, not an extracurricular activity. I don't even remember what the subject was. I don't remember if it was I don't remember if it was American history or American literature, but I remember the exercise of perfecting that one paragraph, and that's been a lesson to me since as well.
A great tribute to you and the Rani education. Well, listening to you, Preet, I can tell communication, writing, critical analysis are obviously, the stepping stones to where you are now. Vinny, how about you? A core life skill or value that you learned here at Rani that helped you in your professional endeavors?
I think a lot of what Preet's talking about in terms of communication. Oh, sorry, he's rightly saying I should speak louder. I think what Preet's talking about in terms of communication is what you get at Rani. But I go back to what I said at the very beginning, which is this was a very rigorous school. This was a very tough school. I happened to be in the basement of my parents' house a couple of weeks ago looking at the grade. I actually wasn't doing very well at all in 7th grade and 8th grade. And I look at those grades and I'm like, wow, you guys graded tough. And I have one of my teachers here too, which is Mrs. Tomlinson's daughter, Miss Van Buren, which is funny, and an amazing influence on my life as well. And I just felt like, and I look at my kids now in terms of how challenging, in a good way, the school makes it on you, and how prepared it forces you to be. And so when you go out, and to this day, if you're going to be doing anything, you better be prepared, because it's like in your control. There's no excuse for you not to be prepared. You may not have X skill or Y skill, but you can always put in the time and have that preparation. And I just felt like I learned that here first.
See, in 7th grade, he's right. He was falling apart. He comes and tells me, don't tell me that. I'm not Preet. I'm not. So I say, I will understand if you are not capable of doing, I'll accept that. But I don't think you are. And luckily for me, I met Mr. Rani. I met some of the teachers. He says, he's not telling the truth. He's just frustrated that everybody talks Preet, Preet, Preet. And he turned the corner. And finally, at that time, Rani used to have an 8th grade scholarships for next 4 years. He won the scholarship. And that brought the confidence to him. And rest is history.
Well, you definitely have one proud father. You turned out all right, despite your seventh grade start.
I still got a hair.
Yeah, that's an accomplishment. So
Family panels are the best. Can I do 20 seconds? Paying proper honor to another guest in the audience. Another memorable moment of mine was when the curtain went up, when I bizarrely was the lead in the school play, Barefoot in the Park, with my co-lead Jessica Goldsmith.
Yeah.
How could you forget that?
So you touched on this earlier, the concept of failure. One of our core values in our recent strategic vision here at Rani is building resilience. On the Med Advisory and as a trustee of the board, I think that's one of my passion projects to impart upon our current students. Can you talk a little bit about a moment in your career, specifically in building entrepreneurship in your work as an attorney, where you had to rely and manifest resilience in order to overcome a challenge? Because I think when our students get to hear that A, failure is a part of life, but B, then how you can be resilient and overcome it, it'll be really a great story for them.
Sure. And I feel like my whole career has had to be about that. As an entrepreneur, it's a lot of failure, and then you got to kind of overcome that. Probably the one story that is out there a little bit is we created something called diapers.com, and we were having a lot of success around the country, and we were probably one of the top new internet companies in all of the country. And so at some point, there was an article out in Bloomberg Business Week where they asked me some question about Amazon, and I said, bring them on. So they came. And what they decided to do was they decided to cut the prices of diapers by 30%, which is, you may not know what that means, but that is basically such a massive cut.
It's like 0 for 30.
Basically, he's like 0 for 30. And this is when we were, flying high, and we were on the front pages of all the newspapers. And so at that moment, that basically everything came to a standstill, and the question was whether or not we were going to be able to make it. And so that was a moment not just for myself, but for everyone at our company to kind of figure out how to fight that. And that was fighting the biggest of the big. And so I feel like we figured out a way to do that, and then ultimately they acquired us. And so that's probably one story I'm proud of.
And how do you think you built that resilience in your life? Was it a step by step in your childhood, in your education? Where do our students get that grit, you feel, and how do they develop that grit?
So I'll say first, because I think it's a great question, and I feel like part of it is the failure, and then the resilience, and the overcoming, and then the repetition of overcoming, which then builds the confidence that you have, that no matter what happens, you have the foundation, the skills, or whatever it might be to overcome it. So it takes time, in my experience, and a lot of that is just the confidence that you're going to get through it, no matter what it feels like at the present moment. But that, again, that takes the historical failure. It does also require, I think, at the outset, that foundational, educational skill set. You have to kind of get confident. But once you've been through it a couple times, you know that there's a path forward. And probably the best core value we have at my companies, and it's been at all of them, is this, we call it find a way. And the find a way just means, exactly that. You don't exactly know what the path is, but you're going to find it, and you're going to find it, and that just comes with time.
Just add to that, Vinny keeps talking about how hard it was here, and it was, and that's what helps you develop resilience and strength and builds your cortex. But you have to choose. Every place you go is not always going to be as hard as you need it to be to grow, because there are easy paths, right? I think to build the kind of resilience you're talking about, and strength and leadership skills, you have to challenge yourself. And you can go to many high schools, you can go to many colleges, you can take easy classes, you can do things that are in your wheelhouse. You can take a career path that's completely and totally and fully within your wheelhouse. You get good at something, you maintain that same practice and that same career path for 30 or 40 years, that's fine. And you can live a happy life that way. But I think if you want to have, the most successful career, and develop the greatest amount of resilience, the kind that you're talking about. You want to take on challenges and do things that are different and uncomfortable for you. And that's kind of rare.
Right. So I'd love to know, in your story, in your life, a moment where you can share with us how you faced resilience.
Well, I've had, like anybody, things that didn't work out for me, jobs that didn't work out, things that I wanted that I didn't get. But I guess most famously, I was fired by the President of the United States some years ago. And while I consider that to actually be an accomplishment and a badge of honor, it it kind of threw me for a loop. I wasn't expecting it. I've been asked to stay. So there are various things you can do at that point. You can go and do the traditional path. Everyone who had been in my position, who'd been the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, to a person going back, way back to the beginning, I think, remained a practicing lawyer. Went to private practice somewhere, and probably that's what I would have done had Trump been elected, not asked me to stay, and I knew the transition was going to happen. I was going to leave. So, I guess my reaction to the question is, sometimes it's the case when a path is shut off to you, whether it's a failure or not. Don't go back to the old path if you can find another way, and you can capitalize on what looks like it's like a loss or a cancellation of your plans, and do something different. And what I did was, instead of going to a law firm, there was interest in what I had to say about various things in the law. So I wrote a book. My brother, who has taught me more than almost anybody else on the planet, said, why don't you join our media company and think about doing a podcast? I think I said, what's a podcast? And by happenstance, I find myself without a job. I have a teaching gig at NYU Law School. While I'm writing the book, I come to Vinny's company, and we develop together, and the rest of the team at Cafe Studios at Some Spider, a podcast, which I thought, who's going to listen to a fired attorney talk about legal stuff? And then they did. And I had no idea how long I was going to do that. I kind of probably expected that I would write the book, take a year and a half, and then I would go be a lawyer again. And lo and behold, people started listening to the podcast, which is, by the way, not just because they're listening to me, it's because of the energy and intelligence and planning and promotion that Vinny and the rest put behind it. Next thing you know, we have multiple podcasts. We have another successful business that has like 13 or 14 employees. So suddenly, I've gone from being the guy who just got fired, not remaining as a practicing lawyer, but I have a podcast, I have a best-selling book. I'm building a company of, sort of a venture that we end up selling to another company. So, I got fired. It's a weird thing for that to have happened. And the lesson, I think, is, find other ways to take advantage of the circumstances you find. Look, one of the people who called me after I got fired, was very nice of him, was Michael Bloomberg. You mentioned, his magazine. And he tells the story famously, and he's, got a lot of success under his belt as well. He got fired from a job early on. I think it was D.E. Shaw, was it? Mm-hmm. And he was devastated. He thought that was the end of his career. And it was because he got fired that he developed the Bloomberg terminal, and the rest is history. So, when bad things happen, you can turn them into good things, or at least eventually good things.
Wow, great stories, and I think hope for those students of ours who struggle in their high school careers and beyond. It sounds to me that one of the things that has led to the success for both of you is being able to accommodate change, take something that is a negative and turn it into a positive. And in that vein, what is some of the advice that you would give to our Rani high schoolers who are about to face, a challenging career in colleges, deciding where they want to go? We live in the world of parents who are very specific into what they want their kids to do. Yet the path that you've taken is not where it started. So how would you parlay that into advice for not only our students, but the parents who sometimes pressure them into certain pigeonholed careers?
Yeah, good question.
Never happens at Randy.
Yeah. My kids go to a school in New York City called the Dalton School, and they have a motto which is called "Go Forth Unafraid." And I think what that's trying to do is to talk about fearlessness, and that's not an easy thing to have, which is to approach life with that fearlessness so you'll take risk. But I think a lot of what Preet's talking about and change and all of that is feeling comfortable with taking risk. A lot of that is building the confidence and having the resilience. But if you can have that perspective of enjoying life in that way and deciding I'll go for that or go for that even though you may not have a background in this or I might fail, then that leads to new opportunities and you know, it's a very fulfilling kind of thing. And I think Preet was talking about all the different paths that he's taken. And by the way, I think we get some of that, my brother and myself, from our parents who took the ultimate risk. And it's always ironic to me when some of the parents say, you know, you shouldn't take risk X or risk Y, especially in our community, since you guys took the biggest of all risks, which is to come to these, you know, lands 10,000 miles away with nothing. So I think when you can always keep in mind life's short, you know, and if you feel confident and you feel like you've built some skill sets, that you'll be able to kind of navigate stuff. And so just go forth unafraid, that Dalton thing, not to merge two schools. But I think that's a great idea.
Look, Vinny's underselling himself. This point about taking risk, the amount of risk and challenges you voluntarily undertook are astonishing to me. This is a guy who had a very easy path, not an easy path, but had a very clear and traditional path, being a law firm associate of, you know, very well respected and well-known firm, and then starts a company with our fellow Randy alum, Mark Laurie. You know, it takes a lot of guts to do that. And then to do it again, a second time, as I always tell the story, most of you may have heard the story, he gets bought out by a publicly traded company, Topps, ends up becoming the general counsel of Topps. Another, you know, very sort of comfortable, traditional career path to be general counsel of a publicly traded company. Most people would say, well, this is a pretty good spot. I'm just going to sit here and do this. Maybe I can become a general, and I see this all the time now that I'm back in private practice. The goal is maybe I can go to a slightly larger and better capitalized publicly traded company, be the general counsel there. He dropped it all to sell diapers on the internet under the slogan, "We're number one in number two."
I like slogans.
You like slogan. Be unafraid be unafraid of number two. That, I mean, it's not quite the same thing as leaving your homeland for a foreign country that you don't know anybody in. But lawyers don't do that. Lawyers don't do that. And then imagine how, and I don't know, we haven't talked about it that much, how many people probably raised their eyebrows and said, you know, how are you going to do that? How is that going to succeed, right? There was the tennis player who just won the US Open, Coco, right? I've always said a thing, and I posted this on Twitter on more than one occasion. I'm really grateful for the people who believed in me before other people did. And she said, and she's equally correct, she's like, I'm grateful for the people who didn't believe in me because they made me stronger and they made me want to succeed more. So both of those things count, but take risk.
So what made you take that risk? Where did you get the idea, the strength? I know this gets into a whole different conversation, but it sounds to me like maybe the 0 for 30 in baseball might have contributed to that.
I mean, I'm not joking when I say that when you think about what mom and dad did and coming over, as lots of immigrants do, to nothing, the risks that we're talking about that I'm taking are very small in perspective. And so I feel like, you know, not that they've intellectually analyzed it, but that there's some passing of that on. You see a lot of Indian American kids, you know, in entrepreneurship, and I feel like maybe some of that comes from that. But a lot of it just comes from just confidence too over time, you know, and wanting to have fun, because that's another thing too. Just and most of the time when I've jumped at these opportunities, it's because I just thought it sounded better. It sounded like fun.
Look, one of the reasons that Vinny and I are luckier than most people that you come across is that we have loved our career path. We've loved our jobs. I mean, it hasn't always gone amazingly, but we have fun at our job. And by the way, that's a particularly rare thing in the category of humans who have called themselves lawyers, right? Lots and lots of lawyers, you know, continue to persist in their jobs as lawyers. They don't like it very much. And so the advice, going back to your original question, to both parents and young people alike, is allow yourself the luxury, and it's not a luxury, it's a necessity, I think, in life. Life is short. Allow yourself the luxury of enjoying your work. When I give commencement addresses to law students, I invoke Vinny all the time. Every commencement speech, I invoke Vinny for the proposition that just because you've decided to get a JD and gone to law school, you don't have to persist in practicing law in the traditional way. You can practice it in an untraditional way. You can leave the practice of law altogether. You should do what you like, right? You should have fun.
Right. So great discussion. I think what I got out of it, and I'm sure some of you did as well, is first the cornerstone of their success is the parents sitting up there and the family support. And I think that's something that most of our Rani students can appreciate. I mean, the family is where it starts. And to know as a current Rani parent that the values and core values and skills that Vinny and Preet learned here in these very buildings, facing resilience, facing failure, communication, being able to have brevity and economy in your writing. I think that's my favorite phrase that I've gotten out of this afternoon. Really, I think we are, with your gift, with having our young students come in here and have such a wonderful space to learn how to write, how to read and think critically, is going to do great things for generations to the school. So thank you so much to you.
So when they started diapers.com, he came to me, I'm starting a new company, I'm leaving this stuff.
I remember
If they have no money, they started with no money, zero money. Nobody will give them any money. He will call me in the morning, Dad, I'm sending a truck to BJ's. You better go there, order the stuff. I said, okay. I used my credit card. They will do this. Good for them. He recently got married and she was pregnant. I said, what are you doing? And a lot of people have asked me that question, how did you do it? I said, I don't know. And this is one of the success stories he had eventually.
Literally, the BJ story is one of my favorite stories about Vinny's success. As I remember it, you didn't have enough experience yet in the marketplace to have a direct contract with Procter & Gamble, right?
They won't give
so
them.
you had to buy at whatever price you could from BJ's and then resell on the site. And I remember going once to BJ's, and my dad buys $78,000 worth of diapers. And I remember the clerk looks at him and he's like, can I get you like a hot dog? Like, do you want a hot dog, sir? It's like,
The guy says, this is, by the time, every time I'm going, this is a guy who's going to empty up this whole place. So he says, truck is outside. This is how it started.
tenacity, grit, and resilience personified.
and a brand new space. And there are a number of other planned projects. So we're very excited about all of those. But really, I think this project in particular is one that's so impactful on the school. So again, I want to thank Centerbrook for designing it. I want to thank a number of folks who are involved, particularly Dr. Long, who's over here, I think, who is our lower school head. She was very involved in the design of the space, as well as all of those who contributed to it. So we had a couple of families who were lead donors in addition to the Bharara family, and those are the Izdebski family and the Tarabi families. So we thank them. And we also want to thank all of the generous donors to the annual fund which made this project possible. We talk about making the exceptional possible at Randy through the annual fund. We had a wonderful year last year in the annual fund, over $1 million raised, a historic mark for the school, 1.2 million, in addition to over 60% in parent participation. So a really, really wonderful year for philanthropy at Randy. And now it's a pleasure to thank and to welcome the Bharara family, again, for whom the space is named. And I think they need no introduction for a number of you, but I just want to talk a little bit about their history with the school. Starting with the entire family and Dr. Bharara, of course. As I think all of you know, Dr. Bharara was a very successful pediatrician, primarily in Asbury Park, I think, right, Dr. Bharara? For many, many years. He was on the board here at Randy for a number of years, very, very engaged in the school. I think they started here in 1977. Really amazing. So they've been with the school for 46 years in one way or another. So really incredible legacy. Dr. Bharara also, as I said, was on the board of trustees for about, I think, close to 9 years. Is that right, Dr. Bharara? And he was vice chair, I think, for a few terms as well. They donated an award that's still given at graduation. It is the Communications Award, which seems appropriate given the family and their success in that particular area. So every year we still give the Bharara Communication Awards at our graduation ceremony. The family was inducted in the Cum Laude Society. So again, one of the big honors here at Randy is Cum Laude National Honor Society. So the entire family was inducted in 2013. And now I'd like to introduce Preet and Vinny Bharara as well. Again, probably needs no introduction, but Preet was the valedictorian, right, of the proud class of 1986 at Randy. After Randy, he attended Harvard University and then did his JD at Columbia. So he was a keynote speaker at a number of graduations here at Randy. He was inducted into the Randy Hall of Fame, of course, and he has, I think as everyone knows here, he served as the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York for a number of years. He is he's a partner with Wilmer. And now I'd like to introduce Preet. Still, right? And also has done a podcast which is called Stay Tuned with Preet. So he has an advantage over all of the rest of us who are mic'd up today. And we actually have a booth outside that you'll see. It looks like a British phone booth. That's actually a podcasting booth that we'll be using for lower school. So very excited about that. I'm also proud to, so we'll be doing a little reading of one of Preet's books oriented toward children in a bit. And I'm also proud to mention Preet's connection to one of our distinguished faculty who was acknowledged in the Rennie Faculty Hall of Fame a number of years ago, and that is Dr. Tomlinson. And also he's done a podcast. Oh, Dr. Tomlinson, yes. Thank you. So he has an As an English teacher, I just want to point out that you taught the most important subject, obviously, Dr. Tomlinson. Now I'd like to introduce Vinny Bharara. So Vinny came to Randy in 3rd grade and graduated in 1989. He was salutatorian of his class at Randy. A little sibling rivalry, appropriate here, I think. Went to University of Pennsylvania, and then also did his JD at Columbia University, I believe. Was an entrepreneur from very early years with Mark Laurie, another partner. Started diapers.com, and I think there's been a total of 5 other entrepreneurial ventures since then. So again, interesting how we've both law, finance, all of the areas of school that are still very popular areas for our students to major in college and for careers beyond, very well represented by the Bharara brothers. And Vinny was also inducted into the Randy School Hall of Fame in 2016. And now I'd like to introduce a panel that will be led by, excuse me, actually I think we'll start with a proclamation. I think I saw Vin Gopal Yes, thank you, Vin. So Vin, who's also a distinguished Randy alum, would like to read a proclamation for the family.
Thank you to the Bharara family on behalf of the New Jersey Senate. I won't read the whole. The Senate of the State of New Jersey is pleased to salute the Bharara family upon this auspicious occasion, which bears witness to the immeasurable contributions they have made in support of the Rady School. It is altogether fitting and proper for the House to pause in its deliberations. The strength and vitality of the State of New Jersey and the effectiveness of our American society depends on great families like the Bharara family, where each member of the family has not just contributed a lot to the school where their kids went, but also to the community as a large. The Senate pays tribute to the family, to their service, their meritorious record, leadership, and commitment, and extends best wishes. Congratulations.
And now we're going to have a little panel with the Bharara family, and it's going to be moderated by trustee and current parent Shamina Dillon, who's known the family, I think, for a number of years. And she's going to do a few questions, so if I could ask all of you to come up here.
Where their kids went, but also to the community as a large. The Senate pays tribute to the family, to their service, their meritorious record, leadership, and commitment.
Yes. And now we're going to have a little panel with the Bharara family, and it's going to be moderated by trustee and current parent Shamina Dillon, who's known the family, I think, for a number of years. And she's going to do a few questions.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone.
Just one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure.